The gunshot echoed through the Chicago night as Sofia Hernandez pressed her back against the cold brick wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. 8-year-old Gianna Caruso clung to her scrubs, tears streaming down her face as sirens wailed in the distance. "Where's my daddy?" Gianna whispered, her small voice breaking. Sofia looked down at the child she'd sworn to protect, knowing that Lorenzo Caruso, the most feared man in Chicago, was somewhere in that warehouse fighting for his life against the Russian Bratva. The same man who'd looked her in the eyes 3 hours ago and said the words that changed everything. "I trust you with her, with everything." Now bullets were flying, and Sofia had to make an impossible choice. Run with Gianna and disappear forever, or stay and fight for the family she'd never expected to love. The little girl's next words shattered her heart. "Please don't leave us like Mommy did." Sofia's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. One call could save them all, or destroy the only happiness she'd ever known. The warehouse door burst open, and Lorenzo stumbled out, blood on his white shirt, his dark eyes wild with desperation as he searched for them. "Sofia!" His voice cracked with relief and terror. "Get her out of here, now." But Gianna broke free from Sofia's arms and ran toward the danger, toward her father, screaming words that would haunt Sofia forever. "Stay with us tonight. Don't let them take you away." Welcome to Passion and Power, where love conquers even the darkest secrets. Tonight's story will take you on an emotional roller coaster that'll leave you breathless. Comment below where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything to our growing family here at Passion and Power. The fluorescent lights of Chicago General's pediatric ward buzzed overhead as Sofia Hernandez checked her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. 11:47 p.m. Her double shift was almost over, but the exhaustion weighing down her shoulders felt like it might never lift. She adjusted her purple scrubs and pushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear, trying to ignore the gnawing worry in her stomach. Lucia was spending the night at her friend's house again. At 7 years old, her daughter was becoming too independent for Sofia's comfort, but what choice did she have? Working 2 jobs to keep their tiny South Side apartment meant leaving Lucia with neighbors more often than she liked. "Sofia, incoming trauma." Rosa's voice cut through her thoughts. Her fellow nurse was already prepping the trauma bay, her experienced hands moving with practiced efficiency. "What do we have?" Sofia asked, snapping into professional mode despite her fatigue. "Car accident. 8-year-old girl. Possible internal bleeding. Father's bringing her in himself. ETA 2 minutes. Sofia's maternal instincts kicked in immediately. She'd been working pediatric trauma for 5 years, but cases involving children Lucia's age always hit differently. "I'll take lead on this one." The automatic doors burst open with a violence that made everyone in the ER turn. A man strode in carrying a small girl, and Sofia's breath caught in her throat. He was tall, powerfully built, wearing an expensive black suit that was now stained with blood. His white dress shirt hung open at the top 4 buttons, revealing a muscular chest and what looked like a small tattoo on his neck. A gold Rolex caught the harsh hospital lighting as he cradled the unconscious child. But it was his eyes that stopped Sofia cold, dark, intense, and filled with a terror so raw it made her chest tighten. This wasn't just any father. This was a man who commanded respect and fear in equal measure, now reduced to complete helplessness by love for his daughter. "Help her," he said, his voice rough with emotion and something that sounded like barely controlled violence. "Please." Sofia stepped forward, her training overriding everything else. "What's her name?" "Gianna, she's 8. The car flipped, I couldn't stop it in time." His accent carried hints of Italian heritage, and his hands shook as he transferred the girl to Sofia's arms. Gianna was beautiful, with long dark hair and olive skin that was too pale. Sofia could feel the child's weak pulse, see the way her small chest rose and fell too shallowly. "We've got her." "What's your name, sir?" "Lorenzo Caruso." The name meant nothing to Sofia, but she noticed how Rosa's eyes widened slightly. "Is she going to be okay?" Sofia looked into those desperate dark eyes and made a decision that would change everything. "I'm going to take very good care of her, Mr. Caruso, I promise." For the next 3 hours, Sophia worked with the surgical team to stabilize Gianna. Internal bleeding, a concussion, 2 broken ribs. The child was lucky to be alive. Throughout the surgery, Lorenzo paced the waiting room like a caged animal. Sophia caught glimpses of him through the windows, running his hands through his dark hair, checking that expensive watch obsessively, speaking in rapid Italian on his phone. When Sophia finally emerged from surgery, still in her scrubs, she found Lorenzo slumped in a chair with his head in his hands. The powerful man from earlier looked broken. "Mr. Caruso." She sat down beside him, noting how he immediately straightened, that commanding presence returning despite his obvious exhaustion. "How is she?" "She's going to be fine. The surgery went well. She'll need to stay for observation, but she's stable." Sophia watched relief flood his features. "She's asking for you." Lorenzo closed his eyes and Sophia saw his hands tremble slightly. "Thank you. I don't know how to—" "You don't need to thank me. It's what we do here." Sophia studied his face, noting the exhaustion lines around his eyes, the way he kept touching that watch. "When did you last eat something?" He looked surprised by the question. "I don't remember. The cafeteria's closed, but I have a sandwich in my locker. You should eat something before you see her. Children can sense when their parents are falling apart." Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression. "You have children?" "A daughter, Lucia. She's 7. Sophia stood up. "Let me get you that sandwich, and then you can see Gianna." As she walked away, Sophia felt his eyes on her back. There was something about Lorenzo Caruso that set every nerve ending on fire. Not fear, exactly, but awareness. He was dangerous. That much was obvious. But the way he'd looked at his daughter, the raw terror and love in his eyes, told her everything she needed to know about the man beneath the expensive suit. When she returned with the sandwich and a cup of coffee, Lorenzo was standing by the window, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. He turned when she approached, and Sophia noticed again how the open buttons of his shirt revealed that intriguing tattoo on his neck, elegant script in what looked like Italian. "You didn't have to do this," he said, accepting the food. "My daughter would be hungry too if she were in the hospital. It's what people do for each other." Lorenzo studied her face as if trying to solve a puzzle. "You're not from Chicago originally." "Mexico, originally. My mother brought me here when I was 12. Sophia wasn't sure why she was sharing personal information with a stranger, but something about his intensity made her want to be honest. "What about you?" "Born here, but my family's from Sicily." He took a bite of the sandwich, and Sophia noticed how he seemed to savor it despite the circumstances. "This is good. Peanut butter and jelly, Lucia's favorite." Sophia smiled. "Simple things are often the best." "Simple." Lorenzo repeated the word like it was foreign to him. "I don't remember the last time anything in my life was simple." Before Sophia could respond, Rosa appeared in the doorway. "Sophia, Gianna's awake and asking for her daddy." Lorenzo immediately straightened, that commanding presence returning, but as they walked toward Gianna's room, he surprised Sophia by asking, "Will you come with me? She seemed to respond well to you earlier." Sophia nodded, though something told her that stepping into that room would change everything. As they approached the door, she heard a small voice call out, "Daddy?" Lorenzo's entire demeanor transformed. The dangerous man disappeared, replaced by a father whose world revolved around the little girl in that hospital bed. And Sophia, watching him rush to Gianna's side, felt something shift deep in her chest. Something that had nothing to do with professional duty, and everything to do with the way Lorenzo Caruso looked at his daughter like she was his entire universe. "I'm here, Principessa," Lorenzo whispered, taking Gianna's small hand in his large one. "Daddy's here." Gianna's eyes found Sophia standing in the doorway. "Are you the angel who fixed me?" Sophia stepped forward, her heart melting at the child's sweet voice. "I'm Sophia, I'm a nurse. How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Better, but I'm scared to go to sleep." Gianna's eyes filled with tears. "What if I don't wake up like Mommy?" Sophia saw Lorenzo's jaw clench, pain flashing across his features. Without thinking, she sat on the edge of the bed and took Gianna's other hand. You know what? I have a little girl just like you, and when she's scared I tell her a secret. What secret? Gianna whispered. Angels work in shifts, just like nurses. And tonight, I'm your angel. I'll be right here making sure you're safe while you sleep. Lorenzo's eyes met Sophia's over Gianna's head, and the gratitude there was so intense it took her breath away. In that moment, Sophia realized she'd just made a promise that would bind her to this man and his daughter in ways she couldn't yet understand. As Gianna's eyes grew heavy, she murmured, "Will you be here when I wake up?" Sophia looked at Lorenzo, seeing something vulnerable and desperate in his expression. "Yes, sweetheart, I'll be here." But as Gianna drifted off to sleep, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into a world where angels and devils danced together, and she was no longer sure which one Lorenzo Caruso might be. The next morning brought complications Sophia hadn't expected. Gianna refused to let her leave, clinging to her hand whenever Sophia tried to step away from the bed. Lorenzo had spent the night in the uncomfortable hospital chair, and Sophia noticed how he kept checking his phone with increasing tension. "Daddy, can Sophia come home with us?" Gianna asked as Dr. Jennifer Walsh finished her morning examination. "Sweetheart, Sophia has her own family to take care of," Lorenzo said gently, but Sophia caught the way his eyes lingered on her face. "But I don't want her to go. She makes me feel safe." Sophia's heart clenched. She recognized that desperate need for security. Lucia had gone through the same thing after Sophia's ex-boyfriend had left them. "Gianna, honey, I'll visit you every day until you're feeling better, okay? Promise? I promise." Dr. Walsh pulled Sophia aside as Lorenzo distracted Gianna with a story. "I need to talk to you about Mr. Caruso," she said quietly. Something in the doctor's tone made Sophia's stomach tighten. "Is there a problem with Gianna's care?" "Not with Gianna, with him." Dr. Walsh glanced toward Lorenzo, who was making Gianna giggle by doing silly voices. "Do you know who he is? A father who loves his daughter very much." "Sophia, Lorenzo Caruso is one of the most powerful men in Chicago. His family controls half the north side. He's—" Dr. Walsh lowered her voice further. "He's connected to some very dangerous people." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying be careful. Men like him don't form attachments to people like us without reason." Before Sophia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor. "Emergency at work. Can't watch Lucia tonight, sorry." Sophia closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of being completely alone with no backup plan. Her shift didn't end until midnight, and Lucia's school had already called twice about her missing pickup. "Problem?" Lorenzo's voice startled her. He'd approached silently, moving with a predator's grace that she was just beginning to notice. "Nothing I can't handle," Sophia said automatically, but her voice betrayed her stress. "Your daughter?" Sophia hesitated, then nodded. "Babysitter emergency." "It happens." Lorenzo was quiet for a moment, and Sophia could practically see him thinking. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Gianna's being discharged this afternoon. My house has plenty of room and she'd love the company. Your daughter could stay with us tonight." "Mr. Caruso, I couldn't—" "Lorenzo," he corrected. "And you could. Gianna would be thrilled, and you wouldn't have to worry about childcare." Sophia stared at him, trying to process the offer. "You don't even know me. I know you saved my daughter's life. I know you stayed with her when you didn't have to. I know you made her feel safe when I couldn't." His dark eyes held hers. "That's enough." "Daddy, what are you talking about?" Gianna had been listening, her face bright with curiosity. "I invited Sophia's daughter to have a sleepover with you tonight." Gianna's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? She can come to our house?" Sophia felt trapped between practicality and instinct. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a bad idea. But looking at Gianna's hopeful face and thinking about Lucia spending another night alone with neighbors who barely knew her name, the choice seemed obvious. "Okay," she heard herself saying, "but just for tonight." The smile that spread across Lorenzo's face transformed his entire appearance. For a moment he looked younger, less dangerous, almost boyish in his relief. 3 hours later, Sophia found herself in the passenger seat of Lorenzo's black Range Rover, watching Chicago's landscape change from the gritty south side to the pristine north shore. Lucia sat in the back with Gianna, the two girls chattering like old friends, despite having met only an hour ago. "Your house is really big," Lucia said, as they pulled through iron gates into a circular driveway. Sophia's breath caught. The mansion before them was stunning, all stone and glass, with perfectly manicured gardens and a fountain in the center of the drive. This wasn't just wealth, this was power made manifest. "It's too big, really," Lorenzo said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Gets lonely." Inside, the house was even more impressive. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than Sophia made in a year. But there were also signs of a child's presence. Toys scattered in corners, drawings stuck to the refrigerator, a pink bicycle by the back door. "Girls, why don't you go play in Gianna's room?" Lorenzo suggested. "I'll show Sophia around." As the children ran upstairs, their laughter echoing through the vast space, Lorenzo led Sophia through rooms that belonged in magazines. The kitchen alone was bigger than her entire apartment. "This is incredible," Sophia said, running her hand along the marble countertop. "It was my wife's dream house," Lorenzo said quietly. "She designed every room, picked every piece of furniture. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to change anything." Sophia heard the pain in his voice and turned to face him. "How long has it been?" 3 years. Car accident, like Gianna's, but Isabella wasn't as lucky." His jaw clenched. "I wasn't there to protect her. I'm sorry." Sophia reached out instinctively, touching his arm. The contact sent electricity through her entire body, and she saw Lorenzo's eyes darken in response. "She would have liked you," he said softly. "Isabella always said the house needed more laughter." Before Sophia could respond, Gianna's voice rang out from upstairs. "Daddy, can we order pizza?" Lucia's never had pizza delivered to a mansion before. Lorenzo chuckled, the sound rich and warm. "Pizza it is, Principessa." As the evening progressed, Sophia found herself relaxing despite her reservations. Lorenzo was attentive without being overwhelming, funny without trying too hard, and the way he interacted with both girls made her heart do dangerous things. He got down on the floor to play board games, let them paint his nails bright pink, and listened to their chatter with genuine interest. "You're good with children," Sophia observed as they watched the girls build a blanket fort in the living room. "Gianna's taught me everything I know about being a father," Lorenzo admitted. "After Isabella died, I had no idea what I was doing. Still don't. Most days. You're doing better than you think." Lorenzo's phone buzzed, and Sophia noticed how his entire demeanor changed when he looked at the screen. His jaw tightened, and that dangerous energy she'd sensed at the hospital returned. "I need to take this," he said, his voice suddenly cold. "Tony will be here in 10 minutes to watch the girls." "Is everything okay?" Lorenzo looked at her for a long moment, and Sophia saw him weighing his words. "Business emergency. Nothing for you to worry about." But as he stepped onto the terrace to take the call, Sophia caught fragments of conversation that made her blood run cold. Russians getting bold. Send a message. Make sure they understand. When Lorenzo returned, his face was a mask Sophia didn't recognize. The warm, caring father had been replaced by someone harder, more dangerous. "I have to go out for a few hours," he said. "Tony's here. He'll make sure you and the girls are safe." "Safe from what?" Sophia asked. But Lorenzo was already grabbing his jacket. He paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Sophia, there are things about my life that you don't understand, things that could be dangerous for you and Lucia. Then maybe we should leave. Maybe you should." His voice was quiet, almost sad. "But I hope you don't." As the door closed behind him, Sophia felt the weight of Dr. Walsh's warnings settling over her like a shroud. She looked around the beautiful house, at the girls playing innocently in their fort, and realized she was standing at a crossroads that would define the rest of her life. When Gianna emerged from the fort and asked, "Where did Daddy go?" Sophia had to swallow hard before answering. "He had to work, sweetheart." "He works a lot at night," Gianna said matter-of-factly, But he always comes back. He promised. Sophia pulled both girls close, wondering what kind of work required Lorenzo to make such promises to his 8-year-old daughter, and whether she was brave enough to find out. Outside, she heard the sound of multiple cars pulling into the driveway, and Tony's voice speaking rapidly into his phone. Whatever Lorenzo Caruso's business was, Sophia was beginning to understand it was far more dangerous than she'd imagined, and despite every instinct screaming at her to run, she found herself hoping he'd keep his promise to come back. Sophia woke to the sound of hushed voices and car doors slamming. The guest bedroom Lorenzo had given her overlooked the front drive, and through the sheer curtains, she could see multiple black SUVs parked outside. Men in dark suits moved with military precision, their faces grim in the pre-dawn light. Her phone showed 5:23 a.m. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with questions about Lorenzo's late-night business meeting. Now, watching the controlled chaos outside, those questions multiplied exponentially. A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Sophia, it's Lorenzo. Are you awake?" She opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, still wearing his white dress shirt from the night before, though now it was wrinkled and stained with something dark. His hair was disheveled, and there was a cut above his left eyebrow that hadn't been there when he left. "What happened to you?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Lorenzo's hand moved unconsciously to the cut. "Business got complicated. Are the girls still asleep?" "Yes, but Lorenzo—" "I need coffee," he said, already walking toward the stairs. "Join me." Sophia followed him to the kitchen, noting how he moved with careful precision, as if something hurt. In the bright kitchen lights, she could see the full extent of his disheveled state. His knuckles were bruised, and there were spots on his shirt that looked suspiciously like blood. "You're hurt," she said, as he started the espresso machine with practiced ease. "Not my blood," Lorenzo replied quietly, then seemed to realize what he'd said. "Sophia, I think it's time we talked." "About what exactly?" But even as she asked, Sophia knew she didn't want to hear the answer. Lorenzo poured 2 cups of coffee, his movements deliberate and controlled. When he handed her the cup, their fingers brushed, and Sophia felt that same electric shock from the day before. "About who I am, what I do." He leaned against the counter, studying her face. "About why having you and Lucia here might not be safe." Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. "Dr. Walsh warned me about you. Smart woman, what did she tell you?" "That you're connected to dangerous people." Lorenzo laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I don't just connect to dangerous people, Sophia. I am the dangerous people." Before Sophia could respond, Gianna's voice echoed from upstairs. "Daddy, are you home?" Lorenzo's entire demeanor shifted instantly. The hard, dangerous man disappeared, replaced by the loving father Sophia had come to know. "I'm in the kitchen, Principessa." Gianna appeared moments later, still in her pajamas, with Lucia close behind. Both girls looked sleepy and confused by the early hour. "Why are there so many cars outside?" Lucia asked, pressing close to Sophia's side. "Daddy had a work meeting," Gianna said matter-of-factly. "He has lots of work meetings." Sophia watched Lorenzo's face tighten almost imperceptibly. How much did his 8-year-old daughter know about his work? "Girls, why don't you go watch cartoons in the living room?" Lorenzo suggested. "Sophia and I need to finish talking." As the children left, chattering about breakfast plans, Sophia turned back to Lorenzo. "What kind of work requires armed guards and coming home bloody at 5 in the morning?" "The kind that keeps my family safe," Lorenzo said simply. "The kind that puts food on tables and protects people who can't protect themselves." "That's not an answer." Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "My family has been in Chicago for 4 generations, Sophia. We provide services that others can't or won't provide. We solve problems that the police can't solve. We protect our neighborhood, our people." "You're talking about the Mafia." The word hung between them like a loaded gun. Lorenzo didn't deny it, didn't try to soften it with euphemisms. "Yes." Sophia felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She'd suspected, of course. Dr. Walsh's warnings, the expensive house, the way people seemed to fear and respect Lorenzo in equal measure. but hearing him confirm it was different. "I should take Lucia and leave," she whispered. "You should," Lorenzo agreed. "But I hope you won't." "Why?" The question came out more vulnerable than she'd intended. Lorenzo set down his coffee cup and stepped closer, close enough that Sophia could smell his cologne mixed with something darker. Danger, violence, the scent of a man who lived on the edge of death. "Because Gianna hasn't smiled the way she smiled yesterday since her mother died. Because for the first time in 3 years, this house felt like a home instead of a mausoleum." His hand reached up to touch her face, and Sophia's breath caught. "Because when I walked into that hospital and saw you taking care of my daughter, something inside me that I thought was dead came back to life." Sophia closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite every rational thought screaming at her to run. "Lorenzo, I have a daughter to think about. I would never let anything happen to Lucia. Or to you." His voice was fierce, absolute. "I'd die before I let anyone hurt you." "But your world—" "My world is dangerous, yes, but it's also the only world where I can guarantee your safety, where I can make sure you and Lucia never have to worry about money or housing, or being alone again." Sophia opened her eyes to find Lorenzo staring at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying stay. Both of you. Let me take care of you the way you took care of Gianna." Before Sophia could respond, Tony appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face grim. "Boss, we've got a problem." Lorenzo immediately stepped back, that dangerous mask sliding back into place. "What kind of problem?" "Alexei Sokolov's people grabbed 2 of our guys from the docks. They're demanding a meeting." Sophia saw Lorenzo's jaw clench, watched his hand unconsciously move to check his watch, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of stress. "When and where?" "Tonight, Pier 19. They want you to come alone." "Like hell I'm going alone." "Boss, set it up, full security detail, but keep them back. I'll meet with Alexei, but on my terms." As Tony left, Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. "Who's Alexei Sokolov?" Lorenzo's expression darkened. "Someone who's been testing my patience for months. Russian Bratva thinks he can muscle in on my territory. And now he's escalating. Now he's made it personal." Lorenzo's voice carried a promise of violence that made Sophia's blood run cold. "But that's not your concern. If I'm staying here, if Lucia's staying here, then it is my concern." Lorenzo studied her face, and Sophia saw surprise flicker in his dark eyes. "You're staying?" Sophia thought about her tiny apartment, about working double shifts just to make rent, about Lucia spending nights with neighbors who barely knew her name. Then she looked around Lorenzo's kitchen, remembered the way Gianna had laughed the night before, the way Lorenzo had gotten down on the floor to play with both girls without a thought for his expensive suit. "Against my better judgment, yes, we're staying." The smile that spread across Lorenzo's face was brilliant, transforming his entire appearance. He stepped forward and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "You won't regret this," he said softly. "I already regret it," Sophia whispered, "but I'm staying anyway." Lorenzo leaned down, his lips barely brushing hers, when Gianna's voice rang out from the living room. "Sophia, Lucia says you make the best pancakes in the world. Can you make some for us?" Lorenzo pulled back with a rueful smile. Saved by pancakes. As Sophia moved toward the stove, she caught Lorenzo watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Hunger, tenderness, and something darker that made her pulse race. "Lorenzo," she said softly. "Yeah? Be careful tonight." His smile was sharp, dangerous. "I'm always careful, Amore, but tonight I have something worth coming home to." As Sophia began mixing pancake batter, she tried to ignore the voice in her head that whispered she'd just made the most dangerous decision of her life. Outside, more cars were arriving, and she could hear Tony coordinating security details. She was no longer just Sophia Hernandez, struggling single mother from the South Side. She was now under the protection of Lorenzo Caruso, and in his world, that made her both safer and more vulnerable than she'd ever been in her life. The question was, which would prove stronger, his protection or the dangers that came with loving a man who lived by violence? The call came at 3, 17 p.m. Just as Sophia was helping Lucia with her homework at Lorenzo's massive dining room table. Gianna was coloring beside them, humming softly, when Lorenzo's phone rang with a tone Sophia had never heard before, sharp, urgent, demanding immediate attention. Lorenzo answered on the first ring, his voice instantly cold and controlled. "Caruso." Sophia watched his face change as he listened, saw the way his free hand clenched into a fist. When he spoke again, his voice carried a deadly calm that made her blood freeze. "When?" A pause. "How many?" Another pause, longer this time. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Lock down the house. No one in or out until I get back." He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. "Tony, emergency protocol, now." Sophia felt the girl's eyes on her as Lorenzo's voice filled the room with rapid-fire instructions about security details and safe houses. When he finally hung up, the silence was deafening. "What's wrong?" Sophia asked quietly. Lorenzo looked at the girls, then back at her. "Gianna, Principessa, take Lucia upstairs and play in your room for a while, okay?" "But Daddy—" "Now, Gianna." His voice brooked no argument. As the girls reluctantly gathered their things and headed upstairs, Sophia felt dread settling in her stomach like a stone. "Lorenzo, what happened?" "Alexei moved up the timeline. He took Joey." Sophia's heart stopped. Joey was Lorenzo's driver, a sweet man in his 50s who'd been nothing but kind to her and Lucia. "Took him where?" "We don't know, but he sent proof of life and a message." Lorenzo's jaw clenched. "He wants me to meet him tonight, but now he's added conditions." "What kind of conditions?" Lorenzo was quiet for so long that Sophia thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "He wants you there." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. "What?" "Alexei knows you're here. He knows about Lucia. He's using Joey as leverage to get me to bring you to the meeting." Sophia felt the room spinning around her. "How does he know about us?" "Someone's been watching the house, probably for days." Lorenzo's hands clenched into fists. "I should have seen this coming. Should have protected you better." "Lorenzo, I don't understand. Why would he want me there?" "Because he knows you're my weakness now." The admission seemed to cost him something. "In my world, caring about someone makes you vulnerable. Alexei thinks he can use you against me." Sophia sank into a chair, her mind reeling. "So what do we do?" "We don't do anything. I'm sending you and Lucia to a safe house upstate. Tony's already making arrangements." "What about Joey?" Lorenzo's expression darkened. "I'll handle Alexei." "By yourself?" "It's what I do, Sophia. And if something happens to you, what happens to Gianna then?" Lorenzo froze, and Sophia saw the question hit him like a physical blow. For all his power and control, he was still a single father who'd already lost one parent for his daughter. "Nothing will happen to me." "You can't promise that." "I can, and I do." Lorenzo moved closer, his dark eyes intense. "Sophia, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know how to handle men like Alexei." "Then why does he think he can win?" The question hung between them, and Sophia saw uncertainty flicker across Lorenzo's features for the first time since she'd known him. Before he could answer, Tony burst through the front door, his face grim. "Boss, we've got a problem." "Another one?" "Dr. Walsh is here, says she needs to speak with Sophia immediately." Sophia's blood turned to ice. "What does she want?" "I don't know, but she's got federal badges with her." Lorenzo's entire demeanor changed, becoming predatory and dangerous. "Federal badges?" Tony nodded. "FBI. They're asking questions about Sophia's relationship with you, about how long she's been staying here." Sophia felt the world tilting beneath her feet. "I don't understand. Why would the FBI—" "Because they've been building a case against me for months," Lorenzo said quietly, "and now they think you're their way in." The front door opened again, and Dr. Walsh walked in, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. Sophia recognized the look immediately. Federal agents, all business and barely contained authority. "Ms. Hernandez," Dr. Walsh said, her voice carefully neutral, "we need to talk." "About what?" Sophia stood up, instinctively moving closer to Lorenzo. "About your relationship with Mr. Caruso." About what you've seen and heard while staying in his house. One of the agents stepped forward, his badge clearly visible. Agent Miller, FBI, Ms. Hernandez. We believe you may have information relevant to an ongoing federal investigation. Sophia felt Lorenzo tense beside her, saw his hand move unconsciously toward his jacket. The air in the room crackled with tension. I don't know anything about any investigation, Sophia said. But you've been living here for 3 days, Dr. Walsh said gently. You've seen his business associates, heard phone conversations. We're not asking you to betray anyone, Sophia. We're asking you to help us stop a war before innocent people get hurt. What war? Sophia asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. Agent Miller pulled out a tablet, showing Sophia photographs that made her stomach lurch. Crime scenes, bodies, the aftermath of violence she couldn't have imagined. The war between Mr. Caruso's organization and the Russian Bratva that's been escalating for weeks. 6 people are dead, Ms. Hernandez, including a mother of 3 who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sophia looked at the photos, then at Lorenzo, seeing him through new eyes. This wasn't just about protection and territory. People were dying. Sophia, Lorenzo said quietly, don't say anything without a lawyer. Why? Agent Miller asked. What does she need a lawyer for if she's innocent? Because in my world, talking to federal agents is never innocent, Lorenzo replied, his voice deadly calm. Dr. Walsh stepped closer to Sophia. We can protect you and Lucia. Full witness protection, new identities, a fresh start somewhere safe. In exchange for what? Sophia asked. Information about Mr. Caruso's operations, details about his business meetings, his associates, anything that could help us prevent more violence. Sophia felt torn between 2 impossible choices, stay with Lorenzo and risk Lucia's safety, or betray the man who'd shown her more kindness in 3 days than she'd experienced in years. I need time to think, she said finally. Time is something we don't have, Agent Miller replied. Mr. Caruso has a meeting tonight that could result in more deaths. We need your cooperation now. Lorenzo stepped forward, his presence filling the room with barely controlled violence. The meeting is off. Sophia and Lucia are leaving Chicago tonight. I'm afraid that's not possible, Agent Miller said. Ms. Hernandez is now a material witness in a federal investigation. She can't leave the jurisdiction without permission. Sophia watched Lorenzo's face transform, saw the dangerous man she'd glimpsed that morning emerge fully. When he spoke, his voice carried a promise of retribution that made even the federal agents step back. Agent Miller, you have exactly 60 seconds to leave my house before I decide you're trespassing. Mr. Caruso, threatening federal agents, 55 seconds. Dr. Walsh grabbed Sophia's arm. Sophia, please, think about Lucia. Think about what kind of life you want for her. Sophia looked around the room, at Lorenzo's tense, dangerous posture, at the federal agents with their badges and promises, at Dr. Walsh with her genuine concern. Upstairs she could hear Lucia and Gianna playing, their innocent laughter a stark contrast to the life and death decisions being made below. I need to see Lucia, Sophia said quietly. Sophia, Lorenzo started. I need to see my daughter, she repeated, her voice stronger. As she headed for the stairs, she heard Agent Miller say, You have until tomorrow morning, Ms. Hernandez. After that, we'll be forced to take other measures. Sophia climbed the stairs on shaking legs, knowing that whatever decision she made in the next few hours would determine not just her future, but the futures of everyone she'd come to care about. Behind her, she heard Lorenzo's voice, low and deadly. If you threaten her again, Agent Miller, federal badge or not, you'll disappear. The war Dr. Walsh had mentioned was no longer something happening around Sophia. She was now standing directly in the crossfire, and every choice led to someone getting hurt. The warehouse on Pier 19 loomed against the Chicago skyline like a monument to violence. Sophia sat in the passenger seat of Lorenzo's Range Rover, her hands trembling as she watched armed men take positions around the building. Despite every argument, every plea, every rational reason why she should be anywhere else, she was here. You don't have to do this, Lorenzo said for the 10th time, his voice tight with tension. Yes, I do. Sophia's voice was steadier than she felt. Alexei has Joey because of me. Because I stayed, because I got involved in your world. I won't let an innocent man die for my choices. Lorenzo's hand found hers, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. If anything happens to me in there, nothing will happen to you. Sophia, listen to me. If something goes wrong, Tony will get you out. There's a car waiting 2 blocks away. You run, you take Lucia, and you disappear. What about Gianna? Lorenzo's jaw clenched. Tony will take care of Gianna, but your job is to survive, promise me. Sophia looked into his dark eyes, seeing fear there for the first time since she'd known him. Not fear for himself, but fear for her. I promise. But Lorenzo... Yeah? You promise me something too. Promise me you'll come home to Gianna. She's already lost one parent. I promise. Tony appeared at Lorenzo's window, his face grim. Boss, they're here. 3 cars, at least 12 men. Alexei's in the middle car. Lorenzo nodded, then turned back to Sophia. Stay close to me. Don't speak unless he speaks to you directly, and no matter what happens, don't show fear. They got out of the car and Sophia immediately felt the weight of eyes on her. Lorenzo's men formed a protective circle around them as they walked toward the warehouse entrance. But Sophia could see Russian soldiers positioned on rooftops and behind cars. The warehouse doors opened, revealing a space that had been cleared, except for a few chairs and harsh overhead lighting. Alexei Sokolov stood in the center, a tall man with pale eyes and a smile that never reached his face. Beside him, Joey sat tied to a chair, his face bloody but his eyes alert. Lorenzo Caruso, Alexei said, his accent thick but his English precise. You brought the nurse. Good. Let Joey go, Alexei. Your business is with me. Alexei laughed, the sound echoing off the warehouse walls. My business is expanding, Lorenzo. Your territory, your operations, your personal interests. His pale eyes fixed on Sophia. All of it interests me now. Sophia felt Lorenzo tense beside her, saw his hand move slightly toward his jacket. Around the warehouse, she could sense both sides preparing for violence. What do you want? Lorenzo asked. Simple. You retire. Leave Chicago. Turn over your operations to me and everyone lives. Alexei's smile widened. Refuse. And your friend Joey dies. Then your beautiful nurse. Then eventually your daughter. The temperature in the warehouse seemed to drop 20 degrees. When Lorenzo spoke, his voice carried a promise of death that made Sophia's blood freeze. You just made the last mistake of your life. Did I? Alexei pulled out a gun, pointing it casually at Joey's head. I don't think so. You see, Lorenzo, I know about your weakness now. You care about people. That makes you predictable. You're right, Lorenzo said quietly. I do care about people. But you made one crucial error, Alexei. What's that? You assumed that caring made me weak. But caring about the right people? Lorenzo's smile was sharp as a blade. That makes me absolutely fucking lethal. The gunshot came from outside the warehouse, a sniper's bullet that took out the Russian soldier guarding the back exit. In the chaos that followed, Sophia saw Lorenzo move with deadly precision, drawing his weapon and putting 2 bullets in Alexei's chest before the Russian could react. Get down! Tony shouted as gunfire erupted throughout the warehouse. Sophia dropped to the floor, crawling toward Joey as Lorenzo and his men engaged the remaining Russians. She reached the chair just as Joey looked at her with grateful eyes. The ropes! He gasped. Behind the chair! Sophia's fingers worked frantically at the knots, her nursing training keeping her calm despite the violence exploding around her. When Joey's hands came free, he immediately grabbed the gun from Alexei's dead body. Stay down, Sophia, he said, positioning himself between her and the gunfire. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the shooting stopped, Sophia looked up to see Lorenzo standing over the last Russian soldier, his white shirt torn and bloody, his dark eyes wild with adrenaline. It's over, he said, his voice rough. It's over. Sophia stood on shaking legs, looking around the warehouse at the aftermath of violence. Bodies lay scattered across the concrete floor, and the air smelled of gunpowder and death. Joey, are you okay? She asked. Thanks to you, sweetheart, that was brave as hell. Lorenzo crossed the warehouse in quick strides, pulling Sophia into his arms with desperate intensity. "Are you hurt? Did anyone touch you?" I'm fine." Sophia buried her face against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent beneath the smell of violence. "Is it really over? The war with the Russians?" "Yes, Alexei was their leader in Chicago. Without him, they'll retreat." Lorenzo pulled back to look at her face. "But Sophia, there will always be another war, another threat. That's the reality of my world." Sophia looked around the warehouse again, at the price of Lorenzo's protection, at the violence that surrounded his love. "I know." "And you're still staying?" Sophia thought about the federal agents waiting for her answer, about Dr. Walsh's offer of witness protection, about the safe, normal life she could build for Lucia far away from all of this. Then she thought about Gianna's laugh, about Lorenzo's gentle hands as he played with both girls, about the way he'd looked when he thought he might lose her. "I'm staying," she said quietly. "But Lorenzo, things have to change." "What do you mean?" "The FBI knows about us. They'll keep coming. And I won't live in a world where Lucia and Gianna have to grow up afraid." Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. "What are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to find a way out. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Find a way to build something legitimate, something safe for our girls." "Our girls?" Sophia smiled through her tears. "Gianna asked me this morning if I was going to be her new mommy. I told her that was up to her daddy." Lorenzo's face transformed, hope and love, and something deeper flooding his features. "Sophia Hernandez, are you proposing to me in a warehouse full of dead Russians?" "I'm telling you that I love you, Lorenzo Caruso. I love your daughter. I love the man you are when you're with her. And I love the man you could become if you let yourself." Lorenzo cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize she was crying. "I love you too, amore, more than I thought possible. And I promise you, I'll find a way out. For you, for Lucia, for Gianna, for us." When he kissed her, Sophia tasted hope and danger, and the promise of a future that would be anything but simple. Around them, Lorenzo's men were cleaning up the aftermath of war, but Sophia could only focus on the man in her arms and the life they were choosing to build together. "Stay with us tonight," Lorenzo whispered against her lips, echoing his daughter's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "Tonight and every night," Sophia whispered back. As they walked out of the warehouse together, Sophia knew she was leaving behind any chance of a normal life. But looking at Lorenzo, thinking about Gianna and Lucia waiting for them at home, she realized that normal had never been what she wanted anyway. She wanted this. Dangerous, complicated, absolutely real love with a man who would move heaven and earth to protect his family. Even if that family had been built in the shadows of violence, even if their love story had begun in a hospital and been sealed in a warehouse full of ghosts. Some love stories were written in poetry. Theirs was written in blood and bullets and the fierce determination to build something beautiful in the darkness. And Sophia had never wanted anything more. Years had passed since that night at Pier 19, and the Chicago skyline looked different from the windows of Caruso Medical Center. Sophia stood in her office, she still marveled at that, watching Lorenzo cut the ribbon for the new pediatric wing. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, his hair now touched with silver at the temples, but his smile was the same one that had captivated her in that hospital corridor so long ago. "Mommy, look!" Lucia's voice drew Sophia's attention to the ceremony below. At 15, her daughter had grown into a confident young woman who moved between two worlds with grace, the legitimate medical empire Lorenzo had built and the family legacy he'd carefully transformed. Beside Lucia stood Gianna, now 16 and every inch her father's daughter in intelligence and determination. But where Lorenzo had once channeled his intensity into violence, Gianna focused hers on medicine. She wanted to be a pediatric surgeon, inspired by the woman who'd become her mother in every way that mattered. "The new wing looks amazing," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Sophia turned to see Joey, now Lorenzo's head of security for the medical centers, his face bearing the scars of that night, but his eyes bright with contentment. "The kids are going to love the new playroom. Lorenzo insisted on the best of everything, Sophia said, watching her husband. Yes, husband. They'd married in a small ceremony 3 years ago. Shake hands with city officials and donors. He says children deserve beauty while they heal. He's come a long way from the man who solved problems with bullets. Sophia nodded, thinking about the transformation she'd witnessed. It hadn't been easy. There had been federal investigations, tense negotiations with other families, and more than one attempt to pull Lorenzo back into the old world. But he'd kept his promise, gradually transitioning from street boss to legitimate businessman, using his organizational skills and protective instincts to build something lasting. The Caruso Medical Centers now operated throughout the Midwest, providing healthcare to underserved communities. Lorenzo's old territory had become a network of clinics and hospitals, his former soldiers retrained as security guards and administrators. Dr. Caruso, a young resident, appeared in the doorway. "Your husband is asking for you downstairs." Sophia smiled at the title. She'd finished her medical degree through night school, with Lorenzo's full support and encouragement. Now she ran the pediatric trauma program that had saved dozens of children like Gianna. Downstairs, the ribbon-cutting ceremony was winding down. Lorenzo caught sight of Sophia, and his entire face lit up, the same expression he'd worn that first night when she'd promised to stay with them. "There's my beautiful wife," he said, pulling her close as cameras flashed around them. "What do you think of our latest project?" "I think you're going to spoil every sick child in Chicago," Sophia said, straightening his tie, a gesture that had become automatic over the years. "That's the plan." Lorenzo's hand moved to the small of her back, a protective gesture that had never changed. "Speaking of spoiling children..." "Lorenzo, no. We agreed. Just hear me out. The girls are practically grown up. The medical centers are running smoothly. And I saw you looking at the baby pictures in the NICU yesterday with that expression." Sophia felt her heart skip. They'd talked about having children together, but between building the business and raising 2 teenagers, the timing had never seemed right. "What expression?" "The same one you had when you first held Gianna in the hospital. Like you were born to be a mother." Before Sophia could respond, Lucia and Gianna appeared at their sides, both girls grinning with barely contained excitement. "Did you ask her yet?" Gianna demanded. "Ask me what?" Sophia looked between the 3 most important people in her life, noting their conspiratorial expressions. Lorenzo reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wrapped box. "The girls and I have been talking, and we think our family needs one more member." Sophia opened the box to find a tiny hospital bracelet with baby Caruso written in Lorenzo's careful handwriting. "We know you're not pregnant yet," Lucia said quickly. "But we wanted you to know that we're all ready when you are." "We've already picked out names," Gianna added. "Isabella if it's a girl, after my first mommy, and Antonio if it's a boy, after Uncle Tony." Sophia felt tears welling up as she looked at the bracelet, then at Lorenzo's hopeful face. "You really want another baby?" "I want everything with you, amore. Babies, grandchildren, growing old together in that house that used to be too big and lonely." Lorenzo's voice was soft, intimate despite the crowd around them. "I want to give you the family you dreamed of when you were working double shifts and raising Lucia alone." Sophia thought about that scared, exhausted woman she'd been, about the night she'd walked into Lorenzo's world and changed everything. She thought about the violence they'd survived, the love they'd built, the legitimate empire they'd created together. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I want that too." Lorenzo's kiss was soft, gentle, nothing like the desperate passion of their early days, but somehow deeper and more meaningful. Around them the crowd applauded, thinking they were celebrating the new medical wing, but Sophia knew they were really celebrating the promise of new life, new beginnings, and the family that had grown from the ashes of Lorenzo's old world. "Stay with us tonight," Gianna said, echoing the words that had started it all, her voice full of laughter and love. "Tonight and always," Sophia replied, the same promise she'd made years ago in a warehouse full of danger, now spoken in a hospital full of hope. As they walked through the gleaming halls of the medical center, past photographs of the children they'd helped save, Sophia marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From that first desperate night, when Lorenzo had carried his injured daughter through these doors, to this moment when they were planning to expand their family in the empire they'd built together. The little hospital bracelet felt warm in her palm, a promise of the future they were choosing to create. And as Lorenzo's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of years and the excitement of dreams yet to be fulfilled, Sophia knew that some love stories were worth every risk, every sacrifice, every moment of fear. Theirs had been written in blood and bullets, but it would be remembered in the lives they'd saved, the family they'd built, and the love that had transformed a dangerous man into a devoted father and husband. The Mafia boss and the nurse had become the doctor and the philanthropist, but at their core, they were still the same two people who'd found each other in a moment of crisis and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage of their separate worlds. And now, with the promise of new life growing between them, their story was just beginning. What an incredible journey of love, transformation, and family. Lorenzo and Sophia proved that even the most dangerous love can become the most beautiful redemption here at Passion and Power. Did this story touch your heart the way it touched ours? Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that'll make you believe in the power of love to change everything. Your support helps us bring you these emotional roller coasters every week.